This is episode 5, and I felt called to talk about identity, the self, how we see ourselves. A question that you've maybe asked or considered asking and exploring is, who am I? Your perception of who you are becomes the truth for the period of time, just like any other belief. And the reason it's so significant and relevant is because how you live your life, how you experience life, how you engage with other people is all going to be through that lens of how you see yourself and how you answer the question of who am I? And as we are typically born and raised into our human family, whatever our family was like, we sought out to be loved and accepted. It's just hardwired in some belief so that we can engage and connect, develop relationship. And of course, we don't even have a fully developed body or brain when we are very little. It continues to grow. And little side note, our brains aren't done even fully growing and developing until our late 20s. So the concept of self will certainly evolve and change as we grow. And many of us who are on whatever version of our awakening process, the consciousness of being a human being, is very relatable to our development of self, how we see ourselves. And when we get older, and I can speak from my own personal experience, and I hear this a lot with the clients that I work with, is we can get to a point, not that there's a certain age, it's not all the same for everybody, but we can get to the point where we may feel like we have achieved, accomplished, the things that we believed were the things that we either should do or might have felt good, might not just been a should. And then we realize we just feel like something's missing. Like it just doesn't feel whatever we felt expected. And I'll talk about expectation and how that comes into play, because it's like I did the things, this is what should bring happiness and fulfillment and all those things for me, and yet I don't feel it. And so for me, that certainly happened several years ago where I was like, wow. And I've had, like getting trained to be, able to work with people in the ways that I have. It was quite an investment of, time and money and commitment. And I really, wanted it. And it's interesting how what we thought we wanted and did want had a purpose for the time, but we continue to grow and expand. We are here to expand and have an experience of this existence in a body, is what I believe. And if we're living from up here about who we think we are, which early on, when that is getting created to the level of awareness that it is when we are younger, which changes when we're older for many reasons. The awareness, things are so simple. We're actually, there's a lot of folks who talk about and describe and, research-based even, that when we're young, we're so in the flow and we're really connected with, source, divine, whatever. But then we start to learn, because of the outside world, we start to learn, wow, there's some rules I have to follow if I want to be accepted and not kicked out of this tribe, right? Whatever that is. Family, school, societies, there's laws. And so we're taught, morality and all of that. And we are judged for how we act. And that can, emanate from how we see ourselves, but how we see ourselves is sort of clouded with what others expect of me, what I need to do to be accepted, loved, and all of that. And I don't know if that resonates for anyone, but for me and for my clients, it's like, yeah, I was very confused about who I was because I would tailor what I would say even to who I was talking to. And on the one hand, I would name that as like sort of empathy, awareness of like being thoughtful and considerate of the listener. Like, I'm not going to go talk about a subject to someone who, in my knowing or perception, has no interest in that. And by the way, none of what I'm saying is right or wrong. I am just naming things that have been coming into my awareness that impact my experience of being a human. And it's all contributed to my expansion and shifting from I'm separate, individual, human, all alone, to no, I'm part of all that is. I'm part of divine or consciousness, creation, whatever you want to call it. So the perception I have of me and of my listener meaning whoever I'm around, it can be so challenging to separate the what do they want to hear or what do you expect of me from who am I really and what do I really want to express? What do I really feel? Because if we walked around saying everything we thought and felt, right, without, just being aware of how we would affect other people, we'd probably find that we'd get a lot of reactions from other people. And you may have explored and heard about the real you, the authentic you. I have talked about that, not in my podcast, but, being our authentic self, which when I think about that as I'm speaking about it right now, is just showing up in the moment. How do I feel? What inspires me? And can I express that fairly freely to whoever and around whomever? Or do I need to hide that because of fear of judgment and not being understood? The concept even of being understood, it really interferes with connection. Because if I'm sharing something with someone and they have no frame of reference for what I'm talking about, their mind, depends, right? Everyone is different, but it's a common experience I have had and others where people go, well, that's odd. Whether they say it out loud or not, it's like, well, I don't get, that doesn't make sense to me. That's a very cognitive mind type of experience where if we don't understand something and we don't have awareness that that's blocking, like instead of trying to understand what someone's talking about with you, just having an open heart and just caring that they care about what they're talking about, like love, connection. And so those of us who would identify as having a lot of empathy and even the gifts of sensing, feeling, however that flows, what other people are feeling, which really can get things kind of confusing because it's like, well, what am I feeling? What are they feeling? And I'm not going to go off on that subject right now. Maybe I will in another podcast. But the point is, you are you. And what you believe about who you are and what you notice about how it affects your relationships and how you feel. So many of us, and not just to put this on women, but I've experienced this, and pretty much all of my female clients share that they feel like they need to focus on others, make sure they're okay and feeling good before they can tune into themselves. And it's actually not healthy. It's not helpful. We do it to get the approval. We do it to stay safe because it's relatively safer to focus on other people, because then they're not going to criticize us. If you're always there for someone else and doing whatever you do to try, because we can't make sure anyone else is okay. We can't. We can care, we can love them, things like that. But it's when we take on more than is really what ours to take on, that the boundary lines get really fuzzy. And then we get exhausted. So if your body is in a state of exhaustion and depletion, and you wake up like that every day, and you're giving, I was there. I got very sick. Yep, I was there for years. And so it requires us to come back in with the belief that I matter. I'm important. What I feel matters. And matters so deeply that I can be there for whatever I feel, even if those feelings are uncomfortable. And in my last podcast, I was talking about emotions. And so you can listen to that. I won't go repeat all of that. But it's so important to be aware of what we feel, because we do a version of neglecting ourselves. And that is all tied into how we see ourselves, what we are expected, our perception of what others expect of us, and us trying to live up to that. And instead of all of that, which is typically what we're all experiencing, what if we could just experience being self? That is tuned in each day to what would feel good for me right now. We're so on automatic pilot, doing the same things in the same way every day. And especially if you have any kind of a 9 to 5, whatever type of job, then it doesn't feel like a choice, right? It feels like you can't, but we think we know how it's going to go, what the options are. And if we believe that, that'll be the truth. And then you will just keep living that every day, day in, day out. If you want to have a shift, a change into experiencing more joy, more well-being, it's what we all want. It's part of the ride of being human, that we're going to have other sensations. And there's a purpose in that too. But as far as wanting to experience more joy, then you need to do something different. And that starts with awareness and choice from that space. So if you, even within your day of structure, as you believe you have to follow and stay within those rules, right, of the job or the whatever, there are still some choices and free will about what would feel good for you. You could wake up a little earlier, and if what would feel good is going and getting a special coffee drink that you don't normally do, or whatever it might be, taking a little walk. Anything we do, especially first thing in the morning, to get connected with ourselves and being intentional about our day. If we just keep focusing out there all the time, trying to be good enough to live up to the expectations, we are perpetually disappointed, sad, lonely, frustrated. The frustration, I see it as a cue of you're meant for more and you're not living it quite yet. And maybe you don't know what to do and all that kind of stuff. So let that fuel you. And then even frustration is on the spectrum of like anger. And anger, resentment, all that. So it builds up inside of us as feelings, sensations. And it serves a purpose because we are not meant to live in doing the same thing in the same way for some version of a lifetime. And if you feel good, the real thing that will tell you is how you feel. If you feel good doing the same thing in the same way, in the same order, not literally necessarily, but every day, good for you. Keep doing that. But if you're here listening to this, that's probably not how you're feeling, or you would not even be listening to this podcast. So there's nothing wrong with anything that you're doing. It's just a matter of perspective about what you believe about who you are. Some folks will put out there who you are compared to who you want to be. And I get that, but some of that for me anyway just feels kind of like, do I have to change who I am to be okay? I think any energy or focus around that, to me, inherently brings with it, I'm not okay as I am. I personally feel so good now when I look at what supports my expansion, even things that don't feel good. And that's not easy because expansion is not all going to be comfortable. It's not. But if you can see that discomfort as I'm on the right track, because when you go to make a change, your mind and your body is going to go, A lot of the time, it's going to go, Even though you might feel miserable with how things are in your day-to-day life, when you go to make a change, that is stepping into the unknown. The unknown, until you do, become present and aware that there is another way to experience it. The unknown can be very exciting and it can be very fun, but it does involve uncertainty. That is how we expand. We cannot expand without the unknown and uncertainty, because otherwise we're staying in what the prediction is of what I can control. And then it references the past, the stories of what has happened and what I need to do now to stay safe. And we are repeating and living our lives in such a limited way based on all of that. You don't need to take grand, big leaps to make changes. I encourage, when I'm working with people, depending on, everyone's different with where they're at, but do small little things. If you don't normally do something, add it in and do a couple minutes of it. That's why when I'm teaching the guided meditations and the heart coherence and tapping are really nice, but like just checking in with yourself, tuning into your heart area. You're not coming in with things aren't okay. You may come in actually with judgments, but the intention about it is to just be with what's there. And that is where I really like the tapping, when it's so uncomfortable that you don't want to go there. Because what happens is all those judgment and negative thoughts and criticisms about you, they're going to come up if you get quiet. We're all inadvertently trying to not hear those and feel those sensations related to those thoughts. But there's more to it than just awareness of thoughts. It's feeling the feelings, sort of like an observer, not like outside your body. There is a place for that, but I'm talking about just feel your sensations and just appreciate that you are an expansive being, or if you may not believe that, but you can hold the space for, wow, it's pretty amazing that my body can even feel all these things. We judge it so much and we get so frustrated with it. We want it all to change so that we can feel happy, feel fulfilled, all those things. But we don't get there from resisting what is. You may be noticing that. And there's all kinds of options, therapeutically wise, coaching wise, you name it, for how to fix what's going on and what's wrong. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. What if this is just the journey of expansion you're meant to have as a human? You have a soul. It wants to do whatever it wants to do. And you have a say in it. But if where you come from with that is from your mind that is looking outside of you, that's not going to be connected to who you really are. And if this interests you to get connected with who you really are, there's a process I use to help people do that. And I've done little snippets of it in many of my videos, but the heart-centered, we need to kind of be aware of what the thoughts are in the mind, not follow them, open our heart, get connected. And I do it differently with everyone, depending on where they're at and what they have experienced, spiritually, meditatively. So there's never a one size fits all, but it can be very, very simple. It can be very simple. And it's so important to me that people know that there's options, that you do not have to stay in any version of stuck or whatever it might feel like to you. You're here for a reason. You're just special and precious just because you're you. And when you connect with who you really are, which whatever that is, it's not even definable by words. Just connecting with the experience of you is another real way to say this. That doesn't require you to do or be anything specific. Letting go of expectations and judgments. Stop looking outside yourself, trying to figure out who you should be so others will accept you. That is just a recipe for remaining the feeling of separation, that you'll just be run by the you that is just trying to be good enough. So please reach out with any questions that you have. That's what I have today for this podcast, and I really do hope you have a very lovely day.